You know, God is in the business of taking ordinary people and doing extraordinary things through them. I mean, we look at the Bible, we see this guy named Moses, and he takes a stick and causes a sea to split. We see this other guy named Elijah, and he prays for it not to rain, and well, you know it, but it doesn't rain. These people are extraordinary people in the Bible that we see. We can point out more people throughout the Bible, like, Jesus himself. He dies on the cross and defeats death. Extraordinary. But each one of these people, they have something in common, is that they are ordinary, everyday, average people. Other than Jesus, the Son of God, God incarnate, God in the flesh, everyone else, like Paul was just an ordinary Pharisee that God chose to say, I'm going to use this guy for an extraordinary purpose. Me and you, we are living in the 21st century. We're like, what am I going to do with my life? What career am I going to pick? What should I do? Why am I here? Like, we're all asking the same question. The funny thing is that, we're living in the United States. We're the top 1% richest nation on earth. If you're earning like $50,000 a year, you're top 1%. One of the richest people on earth. And yet we're still like, why am I here? We're still asking the question, what is my purpose in life? And your purpose in life is to be used by God in an extraordinary way. God wants to take you, an ordinary person, and use you in an extraordinary way. In this episode, I'm going to talk about what God has done with me in my life, my ordinary life, and what extraordinary things He has done to try to be an encouragement to you who are wondering, why am I here? And what is my purpose? And does God really have a plan for my life? If I had to start somewhere to talk about something extraordinary of how God has used me or whatever, I would have to start from the day I was born. See, I was born with what's called a cleft palate. Cleft palate is when you're born without the top of your mouth. In India, I think it's like 1 out of 100 people are born with that condition. I was also born with something else. My jaw was like not developed all the way, so they had to break my jaw and reattach it and push it out. And honestly, the doctors told my mom, put your son on disability and just, your son's never gonna be able to talk. My mom told the doctors, no, you're gonna fix my son's mouth because he's gonna do something with his life. And the doctors would in an argument with my mom saying, no, your son is not going to be able to talk. And here I am 20 years later, and I'm a preacher. Of all the professions that I could be pursuing, is to open my mouth and talk about God. And the doctor said that I would never be able to talk. So that in itself is crazy. I didn't learn how to talk completely until I got to like the beginning of high school. It took me years, and even now I struggle with different words and letters and stuff like that, but it's good enough, and I'm able to present the gospel, and God is using me in my weaknesses. When I was about 7, I met my dad for the first time, and I remember he told me he was gonna come back the next day and spend time with me, and I never saw him again. I spent the ages of like 8 to about 13, 14. My stepdad was in a federal penitentiary. I had a brother that was locked up constantly, always getting arrested for Grand Theft Auto. So like, my background is not the background of the typical Christian. I did not go to a private Christian school. I did not go to a I wasn't like living with a Christian family, you know. Like, I did not, that's not my background. My background is straight up like, stepdad was in prison. My real dad walked out on my mom. You know, my brother was locked up too. So, I was born without the roof of my mouth. Like, all these crazy things kind of coming together in the beginning of my life. First decade of my life, right there. So, the reason I mention that is because early on, when I first became a Christian, people accused me, saying, "Oh, you were raised that way." No, honestly, I was raised not to be this way. I was raised to hate God. But God in His loving kindness kind of reached down and said, I'm gonna choose you. I'm gonna do something with you. So there you got it right there. That's how it all kind of started. Let's see. I remember when I was about 8 until I was 12. I probably been in the back of a police car like 4 times in those years. When I was 11, I was arrested and charged with a second-degree felony for arson in the state of Texas. And man, I pleaded guilty. Somehow the charge got dropped to a second-degree misdemeanor, or a Class B misdemeanor. Why did I say second-degree misdemeanor? See, that's why I need coffee. And I got some right here. Well, anyway, it got dropped to a misdemeanor, and I got probation, and I had to do community service. I remember though, I was being walked out of the elementary school I was going to, and they put handcuffs on me and inside the police car, and took me down to the police station, fingerprinted me, and took a picture of me. And I still got the mugshot too to this day, because nobody believes me. I got the paperwork. Nobody believes me when I say that. I was arrested and charged with a second-degree felony, age 11. So, my background in the church, I grew up in the church. Pre-K, all the way until, today. I just kind of grew up in the church. I was always going to church on Sunday. It was just part of what we did. Which is weird, because I'm the only one in my family that actually came out to be a Christian. And the weird part is, like, my brothers went to church. My mom, she did not go to church. But my brother stopped going to church. But there was always something that drew me closer to the Christians. I saw that there was something different about them. And I wanted to know what it was, because there was something different. They were not like my family. They were different. And if you're a Christian and you're hearing what I'm saying, you know what I'm talking about. I saw Jesus in these people, and I saw Jesus at a young age, and I didn't know what I was seeing, but I saw something was different about people who call themselves Christians. And so it always kept me going. Now in let's see, in 3rd grade I met this guy named Jake. This is when the desire to be a pastor kind of came in. I met a guy named Jake. He was a high school student. He came down to the elementary school I went to, and they told me that he was going to help me like with math and reading and stuff like that, because I struggled in school. So I remember having a conversation with Jake. The only thing I remember about me and him, right, having this conversation, I asked him what he was going to do when he was done with high school. And he said he's going to go and become a pastor. And I was like, oh, what did I say? I said, like, do you need to go to school to be a pastor? And he said, yeah, you do. And I looked down and I thought, well, if I have to go to school, or if I have to go to college, then I'm going to go be a pastor too. And I was just an 8-year-old kid just talking out of my mouth. And I was like, I'm going to be a pastor too. If because I looked up to the guy. And I just wanted to be like Jake. So he was going to be a pastor. I was going to be a pastor. And but that commitment at 8 years old, it kind of followed me for the rest of my life. And kind of weird. But that's that for that little segment. Kind of weird segment. So, when I was about 13, I came to a realization that there is no God. If there is a God, He doesn't care about me. And, Jesus is just a fairy tale. Kind of like the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus. He's just somebody that you would tell other people about, just to make them do good and to be good people of society. So I was convinced around age 13, 14 that there was no God. You can call me an atheist, you can call me whatever, but I was young. I was just kind of looking around. I'm like, well, you got Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy, and you got Jesus, and I kind of put Jesus right there on the shelf with all of them. Around that same time period, I was in church. I was 13, and was I 13 or 12? I think I was 13. I was in church. I was sitting down at a table one day. I was looking at the Bible, and I was wondering about the Bible. And I was thinking about the conversation with Jake, back when I was 8 years old and made that commitment to be a pastor. And I was looking at the Bible, and I was just sitting there all by myself alone. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a pastor, I should probably know what the Bible says. Because up to that point, I didn't know what the Bible said. And so I'm looking at the Bible, and I open it, and I see numbers everywhere, and I'm kind of confused. And then I look in the corner, and there was all these names like Genesis, Exodus, like Leviticus, Numbers, and I'm just kind of confused. I'm like, what's this and what's that? And I had so many more questions than I had answers to. And I decided, you know what? I have a good idea. I'm going to open the Bible to the back of the book. And I'm going to read the last chapter, and I'm going to find out what happens at the end. And then later on, when I'm in the seminary, I'll figure out everything else. And so I opened the last chapter of the Bible, which is Revelations 21. And it talks about the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, growing up in a Baptist church, we didn't talk about the second coming of Jesus. And growing up as a kid, you don't tell little kids that Jesus is coming back. You tell them the gospel. You tell them that, Adam and Eve, they ate the apple, and sin came into the world, and Jesus died on the cross for me and you, and the basic gospel. And so I heard, when I read that Jesus was going to come back to the earth, it was so mind-boggling that I needed to know more. It naturally made me want to ask, how will we know when Jesus is going to come back to the earth? And so I thought, I'm going to read the first chapter of the book, figure out what that says. So I go to the very first page and I read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. When I read that, I thought to myself, wait a minute. It tells us what happens in the beginning of the world, and it tells us what happens at the end of the world? What? I was so confused. I was like, what? What kind of book is this? And naturally, I needed to know what happens in between. And so I made a commitment to read the whole Bible. I was going to read the Bible from the beginning to the end. And I started reading the Bible when I was 12 or 13 or whatever, in Genesis, and then I went to Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, and I went through all those books, and I was so confused, even more confused than I was before, because now I'm reading, like, imagine this, I'm 13 years old, and I never really paid attention in church. I know, like, limited things about the Bible. I know Jesus dies on the cross and he was a good guy. But imagine you're reading the Old Testament and, like, all these wars are happening. All these people are dying. You got God over here, like, destroying nations. You got a law being made. You have over 611 laws created. Some of these laws are saying that, like, if a man robs you, you need to kill him where he stands and bury his body right there next to the door. And you're, like, scratching your head, like, what? I'm so confused. And that's where I was at for a long time, reading the Bible. It's like confused. And honestly, even after, what has it been? 20 years I've been reading the Bible, and sometimes I read it and I get confused. And maybe you can relate to me on that. You're reading the Bible and you're like, what? So, yeah, like, I start reading the Bible and everything, and then right after that, a couple years later, I'm like, yeah, I don't think there is a God. If there is one, he doesn't care about me. There is no Jesus. I'm just gonna put him on the shelf with the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny. And but even after making that conclusion, I was still interested and motivated in finishing reading the Bible. And during that time in my life, I did not go to church. I stopped going to church because it had no reference to me. It had no purpose to my life to go to church. It was pointless. And then I was babysitting at home. And so, it didn't make sense to me to go and waste my time at the church. But just like God brought Jake into my life when I was 8, in middle school, the pastor of the church, he just happened to be a bus driver. And he just happened to be attached to the middle school that I was going to. And he just happened to park on the side of the school that I walked out of. And he just happened to wave me down one day and say, "Hey, Keith." And I came over and I was like, "Pastor Lane? You're a bus driver?" And honestly, like, I didn't go to church, but every day after school, I went to go see Pastor Lane, and we talked about the Bible, and just the different things that I was reading and confused about, and I remember I had this one conversation with him about whether Jesus was a Jew or not. I was telling everyone that, yeah, Jesus is a Christian. He's not a Jew. And Pastor Lane told me, no, Jesus was a Jew. And I was like, what? I was so confused. I was like, wait a minute. If Jesus was a Jew, why am I a Christian? Like, why are we Christians? And I was like so confused. But I learned that because Jesus, that's a whole nother topic. But Jesus Christ, he's the founder of Christianity. His last name Christ. The word Christian, it just arrives from those people who were Christ-like. So a whole nother topic for another time. But yeah, I was like 13, 14, 15, confused out of my mind, reading the Bible, and God in His almighty, powerful wisdom and love and kindness put Lane right there to be a bus driver when I was in middle school. And that's just crazy to think about. When I was running from God, God was running to me. I started going back to church because, one day I woke up because I heard a voice. I heard a voice say, get up and go to church. Man, I got up and I looked around the house and I didn't see anyone. I thought maybe I'm just hearing voices. Maybe I'm too tired. Maybe, I'm coming up with all these excuses in my head. I did not want to believe that God was speaking to me. So I went back to my room, lay back down, and I hear a voice again say, get up and go to church. I got up, man, and I went to church. And the church was about 2 or 3 miles away, so I walked all the way to church. I got there and I went looking for the bus ministry because I used to go to church with the bus ministry, and Skip was right there. Skip was one of the staff for the bus ministry. And I remember telling Skip, I said, hey, he said, where you been? And I told him, oh, I've been home. I just haven't been coming here. But I feel like God told me to come to church this morning. And Skip said, well, he never told you not to go to church. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And I didn't know how to explain to him that I literally heard a voice tell me to go to church. So I just didn't say nothing else after that. And it was a Baptist church too. So looking back, Baptists don't really believe that God moves in that kind of way in the 21st century. But I would say different because I experienced something different. So that happened, right? I started going back to church, and it was different for sure. Like, the bus ministry now was going to the they call it big church. Everyone would go and listen to the main pastor preach. Well, the main pastor, Pastor Brent, was preaching these sermon series or sermons about giving your all to God. And so over the next couple of months, I would hear these messages about giving your all to God. And those words, all to God, were the only words I ever remembered. I remember that, and that God would do something extraordinary through us if we just give Him everything we have, our entire life, to Him. And it made me want to test it out. I want to be used by God in an extraordinary way. I wonder if this is true. I wonder, can God really do something crazy with my life? And, so I had that on my heart for a while about everything the pastor was preaching. A couple of months passed, and one night I was washing dishes, and I had Christian music playing in the background, and I was thinking about everything. The last couple of months, the sermons, the voice I heard, all this stuff. I was thinking about everything, right? And I thought to myself, I'm a good person. If I stand before God right now, and He asked me why He should let me into heaven, I'm sure I can outweigh all my good deeds and my bad deeds and somehow get into heaven based on how good I am. But then I thought to myself, if God is pure, perfect, holy, right? And I'm not. Even if I steal a little cookie from the cookie jar, how can I ever stand before God justified? That was the question on my mind. How can I stand before a holy and righteous God justified? Even if I stole a little cookie from my mom's cookie jar, it makes me a sinner. It makes me unjustified. And I did worse things than that. And so that night, I decided, look, either it's true, Jesus died on the cross and He paid the price for all my sin, or there is no hope for anyone to stand before a holy and righteous God. And that was the conclusion I came up with. Either it's true or there is no hope. And so that night I got on my knees and I prayed. I said, Dear God, I don't know if you're even real, but if you are real, I give you 100% of my life. Whatever you tell me to do, wherever you tell me to go, I will go and I will do. And when that happened, I felt something cover me. My body got filled with goosebumps. I felt like a blanket was covering me, honestly. And I heard in my heart, I heard God speaking to me saying, go preach this gospel table to table in the cafeteria at school. And so the next day I go and I'm looking at the tables in the cafeteria and I'm thinking I'm going to go and tell them the gospel table to table and lead everyone that I can to the sinner's prayer. And so I was making the plans, and then my friend came up to me and said, hey Wes, what's up? How you doing? And I told him what happened the night before, and I told him that I was going to go table to table preaching the gospel. And he told me, oh, can I go with you? And when he said that stuff to me, I thought to myself, isn't there a passage in the Bible about Jesus sending people 2 by 2? And so when he said that, I thought, this is weird. And I told him, yeah, you can go with me, why not? And so he said, okay, cool, so let's plan to go tomorrow. And so that's what we did. We planned today and we went tomorrow. And so we went table to table the next day, preaching the gospel. And that first month, 50 people came to Christ in that cafeteria. And then people around the school started to notice, hey man, that guy that does magic tricks, he's preaching. He's not doing magic tricks no more. He's preaching. And my nickname started to be Preacher. And I started preaching all throughout the school. I was preaching in the classrooms, in the hallways, and soon I started knocking on people's doors, and people thought that I was a Jehovah's Witness, but I told them that I went to a Baptist church, and I started seeing God do things early on in the ministry. After I started seeing all that happen, I met someone online, and her name was Ashley Vazar, and she had a website, and one thing led after another, and I entered into a relationship with her, a romantic relationship with her. She lived in New Jersey, I lived in Texas. She helped me make the website for the ministry. She got me onto Facebook that I never heard of before. I was on MySpace still at the time. And she got me onto Facebook, showed me how to make websites. And we started the ministry together. And well, it was crazy. Even thinking about it now, like I'm looking back now and I'm like, wow. Like God, I've always pictured myself like going to seminary and getting some degree and getting hired by a church. I did not see myself starting a ministry with a girl in New Jersey, an online ministry, like with a girl in New Jersey, and I don't know, it was crazy. And I was still in high school too, and like people calling me preacher, Catholics were calling me priest. It was crazy. It truly was crazy. I was on a mission to reach the world for Christ, and I was like, I'm gonna do it through the internet, and I'm gonna find a way to use this Facebook stuff and all these websites. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna reach the nations for Christ. That was the mission. And then when I was done with high school, I found a seminary and Christian Leaders Institute, and they had a degree, or what was it, diploma of divinity. And so I was like, I'm gonna go for that diploma. And in the meantime, I ended up getting like all these other certificates and degrees, and now I have a bachelor's of divinity through the same school. And so I got to see God just like kind of move in my life in extraordinary ways. Me and this girl, we started the ministry, and I met someone in New Zealand, and he showed me how to market the ministry online, and just God put different people in my path early on to get the ministry started. Things that I did not understand how to do, God provided other people who did know how to do to help me figure out how to do. And then later on, I found out that, oh man, this YouTube stuff has a bunch of videos on there that you can YouTube anything nowadays, or Google anything and learn how to do it. Like now, 12 years into the ministry, we have 4 different apps, mobile apps. I did not go to school to be a app designer. I did not go to school for a tech degree. I tried to go to school for a tech degree, but I don't think that way. I don't have that kind of mindset. My brain does not work that way. And so I use a drag and drop thing, and I watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and most of my stuff that I've been able to do has been done through YouTube videos, or because of that one dude from New Zealand, or because of that girl that I met from New Jersey. I've met people along the way on complete accident. It was by the hand of God who helped me push the ministry to the next level. And so, started the ministry, finished high school, was the first one in my family to finish high school. Up before me, everyone was dropping out all the time. My mom, my brothers, dropouts. And then I came to Christ and became a preacher and finished high school, and then went to college and finished college. And the ministry is born. And I'm telling you, you talking about extraordinary. Like I said, like I did not see myself in that position starting a ministry out of high school. I was like, God, I'll do anything you want me to do. I'll go anywhere you want me to go. And God's like, okay. Okay, you sure about that, Keith? Okay. There's so much more to the story that I would love to share with you. But I'm going to cut it short right here and call this part 1 and then do part 2 sometime next week. And so I hope you are encouraged by this story by the story so far, but also think about your own life and how God has used you in an extraordinary way. Because next week when I do part 2, you're gonna find out a lot more than what I just said. Like, what I just said was like, okay, that was like the milk. Next week, I'm gonna show you what the steak tastes like, because God did some crazy things in my life. And so I'm gonna talk about that next week. Be sure to follow, subscribe, download the Grow Your Faith app in the Google App Store, and visit JesusAloneSaves.org, and also the Day of Psalm page on Facebook. And I think that's it. But really, grow your faith. The Grow Your Faith app. Download it. Google Play Store. And follow this page for more. I'm gonna try to start pulling out more segments like this. So God bless you. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.